At this juncture, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, June 2, 2025. So moved, Mr. President.
There is a motion. Win. Is there any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, June 2, 2025.
Ito na nga, impeachment complaint kontra VP Sara, ipinaglaban ni Senator Joel Villanueva. Pero bago ang lahat, maaari kayong mag-subscribe para maging updated sa mga issue at bagong mga balita. Mariin ngang dumipensa sa Senator Joel Villanueva para ipaglaban ang pagdinig sa impeachment case ng Vice Presidente. Kasiyahan ng Kongreso na udlot. Narito ang buong detalye.
Yes, Mr. President, to give the highlights of the conference committee report.
On behalf of Senator Cayetano, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, on behalf of the Senate panel and the Senate panel head, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes of House Bill number 9989 and the revised Don Honorio Ventura State University Charter, I am pleased, Mr. President, to report in this August chamber the successful outcome of the conference committee. By strengthening the charter of DHVSU, or DABSU, a century-old tertiary education institution in Pampanga, we are taking a step toward social quality and fostering development across the provinces. Among all the efforts of the government, education has proven time and again to be the great equalizer, the most powerful tool for Filipinos to uplift themselves and build a better future no matter their background. The new charter will not only rename and elevate DABSU as the Pampanga State University, it will also expand its academic programs as well as update the composition and powers of its governing board. These changes will enhance the university's ability to provide quality, accessible education to more Kapampangans and students in Central Luzon. Situated in a growing economic hub, this ensures that the university can continue to produce graduates who will drive businesses, NGOs, and institutions forward. The conference, Mr. President, agreed to adopt HBN 9989 as amended by the Senate as the working draft in the Bicameral Conference Committee meeting. Among the highlights of the reconciled version is the addition of a Vice President for Academic Affairs under Section 9. The Vice President for Academic Affairs will assist the President of Pampanga State University alongside the Vice President for Administration and Finance, Vice President for Research, Innovation, Training, and Extension, and the Vice President for Student Affairs and Services. All references to the university were also changed to Pampanga State University in the reconciled version. Mr. President, the changes in the working draft which we stated in the joint explanatory statement are reflected in the contents of the conference committee report. And so with that, Mr. President, I move that the joint explanatory statement be read into the records forming part of my report and that the result of the conference committee be ratified by this body.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. The conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of House Bill number 9989 is hereby approved and ratified. Congratulations to the sponsor and author.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As for minutes,
session is suspended.
President and Senator Joel Villanueva are both recognized. Please proceed.
thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Before I ask 2-3 questions, Mr. President, I would just like to spread into the records that this representation filed a version of this measure And we want to reiterate the importance, Mr. President, of passing a piece of legislation that will ultimately enhance the institutional capacity of our government agencies to improve public service delivery while ensuring, and let me emphasize this, Mr. President, while ensuring the welfare of millions of civil servants. We would like to again put on record, Mr. President, that right sizing is not synonymous with downsizing. As reflected in the substitute bill introduced by the good sponsor, our Senate President, this is an attempt at government organization to streamline roles, functions, mandates, and programs to achieve our social and economic development goals while promoting fiscal responsibility and the efficient use of taxpayer money and guaranteeing, again, let me emphasize, guaranteeing that our government workers are protected every step of the way. And with that, Mr. President, may I be allowed to just ask some questions to the good sponsor if he would allow this representation, Mr. President?
We confirm the statement of the gentleman, Your Honor. Indeed, that is the content and intent of the optimization bill that we filed in substitution of the version filed by Senator Joel Villanueva. And by way of difference, it is actually essentially the same, Mr. President. Only that we added some provisions that was the product of our consultative meeting, namely, to add some employees' organizations to various stages of the right-sizing process. Number two, to provide for a sunset clause, since this should not be ongoing for an indeterminate period of time. And number three, we placed a different formula which is inversely proportional to the length of service of the employee, of the benefits he or she will be receiving should she be affected or he be affected by this program. We also clarified, Mr. President, Your Honor, the requirements that the government should undertake and comply with before they can effect any optimization on any agency of government. But essentially, the heart and soul of the bill would be essentially the same as what Senator Villanueva filed and what this representation filed before the substitution.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to make sure and spread into the records because just by listening to the statements given to us by our good sponsor, I am actually seeing most, if not all, of these items and provisions that he is mentioning as part of the bill that this representation filed, which is Senate Bill number 1474 and Senate Bill number 2502. I was about to ask, Mr. President, the difference because considering that what we are deliberating upon right now here in the plenary is Senate Bill number 890, authored by the Senate President. I also remember and would like to state for the record that during the consultative meeting held last January 7, the Senate President stated that the bill that we filed, Senate Bill number 2502, will be used as the basis of the amendment by substitution. So we again would like to spread into the records our sincerest thanks and gratitude to our Senate President for considering the measures, the bills that this representation filed, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. President, on my second question, Mr. President, may we know how does this bill differ from previous right-sizing efforts, Mr. President? May we know what components of right-sizing or optimization are included in this measure that are not found in the reorganizational reforms of previous administrations, Mr. President?
Not only the organizational reforms, Mr. President, but even the very provisions of the Administrative Code of 1987, which actually authorizes the President to either abolish, merge, or create offices. The main distinction, Mr. President, is that none of those laws actually outlined the requirements for being looked for by most of our colleagues. For example, a study. No such law previously passed nor a provision of the Administrative Code required a specific study to be had before any optimization can be done on any agency. Number 2, consultation and consultative requirements were also never provided for. Perhaps, Mr. President, these are the top 2 reasons why right sizing and or optimization was never or not as successful before as it should be, hopefully, under this piece of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm glad and appreciate this measure under this committee report on optimizing the executive branch will be created to oversee the implementation of the government optimization program. It says here, among others, it shall conduct studies on the mandates, functions, programs, projects, operation structure, and manpower complement of the covered government agencies and instrumentalities. It shall also develop and prepare the optimized organization structure of agencies concerned. So I just want to put that on record that I'm glad that it's part of it. Mr. President, lastly, Mr. President, several government workers are understandably worried. And as chairperson of the Senate Committee on Labor, we have been talking to some of the labor groups, and some of them are worried that this might probably result in thousands of civil servants losing their jobs, etc. At ito rin po yung pinakamahalaga para sa atin, no, bilang representative ng ating mga kababayan, ng mga manggagawa natin, yung pong masiguro na mapoprotektahan natin sila, mapoprotektahan yung kabuhayan ng ating mga kawani ng pamahalaan. May we know, Mr. President, how many workers are estimated to be affected by government optimization program? Matatanggalan po ba talaga sila ng trabaho? What safeguards are in place under the measure that would ensure the protection of their welfare, Mr. President?
400,000 civil servants yung
Kagalang-galang na Pangulo at sa kinatawan mula sa Bulacan, Senador mula sa Bulacan. Tulad ng sinabi niya kanina, ang ibig sabihin ng right sizing, optimization ay hindi lamang pagbabawas o pagtatanggal ng mga empleyado sa gobyerno. Kabilang ng optimization ang paglikha ng mga bagong pwesto na mas angkop, bagay at kinakailangan ng panahon at ng serbisyong dapat binibigay ng pamahalaan sa ating mga kababayan. So hindi ko po sasagutin ng inyong katanungan kung ilan ang matatanggal. Ang babanggitin ko po ay numero ng maapektuhang mga posisyon o tao na maaaring maiangat, tumaas, malipat, pero hindi nangangahulugang automatic na ibabawas o tatanggalin. At ang bilang na binibigay ng DBM sa kanilang nais target ay humigit kumulang 400,000 posisyon. Pero kabilang, ulitin ko rito, ang pag-upskill sa kanila, ang pag-promote sa kanila, ang paglipat sa kanila sa ibang mas kailangang posisyon at opisina, at hindi lamang nangangahulugan na pagtanggal sa kanila mula sa serbisyo. So wala po kaming figure kung ilan ang tatanggalin dahil wala naman pong planong tanggalin na bilang. Meron po kami target na posisyon na i-optimize para mas maging efficient ang pamahalaan.
Gusto ko pong susugan, Ginoong Pangulo, yung binanggit ng ating sponsor, na yung optimization is not only limited to the elimination of redundancies, overlaps, and duplications in operations. But I think it is important to note that it entails the possible creation of an agency or a unit or a position which is deemed necessary for the agency or the department's operations or performance po ng mga essential functions. Nakita ko po dito sa Section 13 ng panukalang batas, nagpo-provide po ng retirement benefits and separation incentives for personnel who may be affected by the optimization program. Gusto lamang po natin, Mr. President, na siguruhin na kung meron man po na may mag-apply ng retirement o separation from the agencies, meron pong incentives na makukuha at mapoprotektahan ang ating mga manggagawa. Yun po ba ay nakasaad dito po sa panukalang batas na ito?
Opo, at yun din ang pinagkaiba nito sa ibang panukalang batas o batas kaugnay ng right sizing dahil wala po ito sa Revised Administrative Code of 1987. At tiniyak po natin na yung mas maikling panahon sa pamahalaan na posibleng mas bata ay makakatanggap ng mas malaking benepisyo kumpara sa mas matagal na may mas malaking benepisyo ng matatanggap mula sa GSIS para mas maging patas, parehas at makatarungan tayo kung sakasakali sa mga empleyadong maapektuhan nitong mga pagbabagong ito sa organisasyon ng pamahalaan?
Ginoong Pangulo, may EO number 366 na kung saan po meron pong 974 affected employees noon na-transfer by the Civil Service Commission to a recipient agencies which needed additional personnel. May mga ganito po bang mekanismo rin na maaaring ipatupad ng panukalang ito na kung sakaling hindi na sila pakikinabangan ng isang ahensya or may overlapping na yung function na pwede silang ilipat sa ibang ahensya ng ating pamahalaan?
Opo, kabilang po sa may pwedeng magawa ay yung tinatawag nating transfer at maliban po dyan, ito rin ang isang unique feature ng panukalang batas, ay meron din po tayong tinatawag na programa para sa upskilling. Para ika nga mabigyan sila ng kinakailangang kaalaman o hindi man talento para magampanan ng ibang tungkulin na maaaring kailangan ng pamahalaan na pwede pa rin nilang punuan bagaman hindi nila kasalukuyang ginagawa.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, at siguro yung huling katanungan ko, just for the record, ay sapagkat ang panukalang batas nito napakahalaga, Mr. President, dahil kagaya, for example, Mr. President, nung EO number 366, ang gobyerno po nag-generate ng 4.247 billion pesos in personal services, savings, and paid 5 billion in incentives and terminal leave benefits to personnel who opted to retire or be separated from the service. So, Ginoong Pangulo, yung huling katanungan ko lang po, para lang po ma-spread natin sa records, meron po bang pag-aaral ang Department of Budget and Management na in place or iniisip o kahit estimate na kung saan magkano yung matitipid ng ating gobyerno, magkano yung inaalat nila kung sakaling magkaroon ng retirement benefits and separation incentives under the bill. Nang sa ganun po, malinaw na maipakita natin sa taong bayan na ito ang way to go. And I believe that, Mr. President, because at the end of the day, yung mga overlapping functions, ating budget deliberations dito sa Senado, ang dami natin nakikita na may mga ahensya na ng pamahalaan. Hindi na ako magpapaligoy-ligoy pa. Yung optical media board, ano pa ba gagawin natin sa optical media board? Things like that, no? And I can cite several agencies and bureaus in the government na I think we really need to act upon, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Your Honor, given that it's not only, as I stated earlier, abolition or retrenchment or retirement of workers, we have several options. The amount estimated in the cost-benefit analysis of the DBM would be, they just gave ranges, Mr. President.
Yes.
3% of the estimated number of affected personnel that they are trying to focus on, it's a 1.28 billion annual savings. If it reaches a high of 7% of the focused positions, it will be 2.69 billion in savings. But if you multiply that, Mr. President, by the long-term benefits of the measure, although the amounts may seem small, it will redound to a larger figure.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Again, almost 4 billion a year.
Yes, that is correct.
Masasave ng ating pamahalaan. Kaya po tayo ay naniniwala sa panukalang batas na ito at nakita natin, Ginoong Pangulo, may mga mekanismo para protektahan ang ating mga kababayan, maging ang ating mga manggagawa o kawani ng ating pamahalaan. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our distinguished sponsor, our Senate President, for taking the cudgels in sponsoring this very important piece of legislation, and let me spread into the records that this representation fully supports this measure. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, at pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, to our distinguished gentleman from the distinguished gentleman from Bulacan for his inputs.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva, Majority Leader.